Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to just offer a shout out to our wait staff here. They are doing a marvelous job. Can we give them a hand? Thank you so much. Thank you. The invitation is for you to continue enjoying your meal, and there's a wonderful dessert here as well. So please continue on. And I'd like to now say that we have a real honor and privilege as our guest today, Mr. Billy Hurley. Billy grew up in Leesburg, Virginia. Who's from Virginia here? Raise your hand, please. Look at this. We have all two of you from Virginia. So we are a very diverse group. Billy, the oldest of 4 children, his father, Bill, introduced him to golf at a very young age. His mother, Cheryl, supported this passion for golf by actually driving him to countless tournaments along the way. During his senior year at Loudoun County High School, Billy was named to the All-State team and ranked 3rd in Virginia. Following high school, Billy attended a wonderful school on the bank of the Severn River, the U.S. Naval Academy. Over the 4-year course of his intercollegiate career here, he won 7 titles. He represented the United States in the Walker Cup and the Palmer Cup. He received the Byron Nelson Award, and he was named the Patriot League Player of the Year. After graduation in 2004, with his degree in quantitative economics, Billy went to sea. He went to the USS Gettysburg, guided missile cruiser 64, home ported in Mayport, Florida, and he held several important billets on board that ship, including the Combat Electronics Division Officer. And after that period on board ship, he returned to the Naval Academy and he taught economics here for 2 years. And then he went back to sea, and he went aboard the USS Chung Hoon. And that was a guided missile destroyer number 93, stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And this tour included an extended deployment to the Persian Gulf. And Billy served as the Force Protection Assistant and also as the ship's first lieutenant. He completed his naval service in June of 2009 to begin concentrating on golf full-time. In 2011, after earning a place on the Webcom Tour, Billy finished the season at 25th on the money list, which earned him a PGA Tour card, the first Naval Academy graduate ever to do so. In 2012, Billy played 27 events on the PGA Tour, highlighted by the 4th place finish at the AT&T National. The following year, he returned to the Webcom Tour, finishing 26th. Again, joining the PGA Tour in 2014, he qualified for his first ever U.S. Open and the Open Championship. And then in June of 2016, Billy won the Quicken Loans International, or the National, a tournament hosted by Tiger Woods as a tribute to military personnel. And this qualified Billy to play his first PGA Championship as well as his first Masters the following spring. Please note that Billy is the only U.S. military veteran on the PGA Tour. A lot of influence there. Billy lives in Annapolis with his wonderful bride, Heather, and they have 3 children, Will and Jacob and Madison. And the family is extremely active in the community, involved in numerous charities, especially military-focused organizations and organizations that have outreach and help for children. We're really fortunate today to have Billy Hurley with us this afternoon. So please join me in giving Billy Hurley a very warm Navy welcome.
On May 2nd, 2009, at 4:30 in the morning, I set foot on my destroyer, USS Chung Hoon. I set foot on the bridge, and it was dark. Like Blues mentioned, after I graduated, I was a surface warfare officer. I was stationed in Mayport, stationed here at the Naval Academy, which was awesome. I'm really glad to hear that quantitative economics is a real thing, one of the mids at my table. My brother gives me a hard time all the time that quantitative economics isn't real. And I showed him my diploma one time, but it still didn't quite sink in. And teaching economics here was actually one of the cooler things that I got to do, because it was really fun to be involved in the brigade and involved kind of as an officer who had some shipboard experience. Anecdotally, on Gettysburg, my CO was then Captain, now Admiral Phil Davidson. And I'm not certain he really liked the whole golf thing, but we got through it together. And so after finishing my naval service, I returned back to playing golf and trying to chase what is a dream. And I've been fortunate to make it to the PGA Tour, and it's really a privilege and an honor and something that I take very seriously to be the only veteran on the PGA Tour. And that responsibility that I feel like I have to the veteran community, to the military, to the Navy, and to the Naval Academy is something that is very forthright in my mind, and something that I try and do to the utmost of my ability throughout playing golf now. So back to May 2009, I set foot on the bridge to take watch as the officer of the deck. And most of you probably know what that is, but for the Marines in the room, I'll give you a little detail. The officer of the deck's overall responsible for the safe navigation of the ship, and obviously recent events in the Pacific do nothing but highlight the importance of this position of the officer of the deck at sea. And so that's definitely a weight that I had as I walked onto the bridge this morning. Back in May 2009, I was the officer of the deck. I was going to be responsible for the safe navigation of the ship. And what we were actually doing that morning was we were going to transit the Suez Canal. And I've been in the Navy for under 5 years now. I was a junior officer on board Chung Hoon. Normally, when you go through the Suez Canal, it's a more senior officer, a department head, or somebody like that has the watch as officer of the deck. And I had never been through the Suez Canal, and so why was I officer of the deck that morning? Well, I was officer of the deck, quite frankly, because I was the best. And I don't mean to say that arrogantly. I say that as a bit of matter of fact. I was the best ship driver on USS Chung Hoon. In fact, I was the best ship driver in all of Hawaii. You know, I did win a PGA Tour event, and I'm really, really proud of that. I hope to experience that again, but I also have 2 victories that no PGA Tour player has, nor probably ever will. I won 2 Ship Handler of the Year awards. So I was the best, and that's why the captain made me officer of the deck going into the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal connects the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. It shortens the trip from the North Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean by about 4,300 miles. It's really an important canal and freedom of navigation place throughout the world for not only the U.S. Navy, but also for cargo ships and industry transportation. And it's about 120 miles long. It has the capacity now to take 97 ships through a day. I didn't actually realize this until a couple days ago that they just opened the new Suez Canal and increased the capacity from 49 ships a day to 97 ships a day. And so there's a lot of traffic. This is a busy place. And so at its narrowest point, the Suez Canal is 673 feet wide. So on a destroyer, that gives you about 300 feet or 100 yards either way. And 100 yards sounds like a lot, theoretically, but it looks a lot closer than 100 yards when you're standing 4 stories up on the bridge inside of the Suez Canal. And so I imagine that a lot of people here can relate to the idea of being the best. We're at the Naval Academy. where only the best and the brightest get in. We play extremely high-level Division I athletics. We have top-notch academics across the board of all of our majors. I would suspect that you can resonate with that idea. And if you can't, I'll tell you that when you step outside of the walls of the yard, that the American public respects it as the best. The amount of people that I talk to, the people that I play with are fascinated by the Naval Academy, by all service academies, frankly, and by how great the quality of people that are here and graduate and serve in our military are. And so I don't think that the idea of being the best is something that's too far from home. You know, ultimately we are part of the United States military, either directly or tangentially here in this room, and obviously that's the best in the world. So I set foot on the bridge at 4:30 in the morning, and it's dark. And we're about 15 nautical miles south of the entrance of the Suez Canal. You go in the Suez Canal at 6 a.m., Navy ships from the south enter first and kind of get the heck out of everybody's way. And so 4:30, I'm there trying to kind of get situational awareness, understand who's who in the zoo, figure out where we're going. I've never been in the Suez Canal before. I've never done this, so it's all new landscape. Everything's new to me. So when I get on the bridge, I start seeing all these lights. It's dark by luminescence of the sun and the moon, but it's pretty bright by luminescence of all the other ship lights. So I distinguished that there's an anchorage up here, which we knew, where all the cargo ships are going to haul anchor and come in behind us. And I kind of quickly figure out that's where that is, up to the northwest. And we keep driving a little further. We're driving a little further up north, and what I don't know is where the entrance to the Suez Canal is. And that's kind of what I care about, right? And there's going to be a red light and a green light. They're going to show me the entrance to the Suez Canal. But I don't know where that is. I can't see that. And quite frankly, I was scared. I'm the officer of the deck. I'm overall responsible for safe navigation of the ship, and I don't know where the channel marker lights are. So we keep driving further and further north, and now I start to see the town of Suez. You can see kind of on the beach there, you can see all the lights that make up the town. So I know I don't want to go there. That makes sense. But what I don't know is where the Suez Canal entrance actually is, right? So we keep driving further and further up north, and we get a little closer, and now this brightest building I've ever seen in my life at sea is in front of me. And so I recognize, all right, that's the Harbor Master building. Got it. Like, that's where they run the show from for the Suez Canal. But I don't know if the canal is on the left side or the right side of this building. But at least I've got it figured out, kind of narrowing it down and kind of checking off the box. But I still don't see the channel marker lights, and I'm scared. I'm frightened. The sheer weight of being officer of the deck, of being overall responsible for the safe navigation of the ship, having my name ultimately in the deck log for this evolution, permanent record of the ship. I'm scared because I don't know, and I'm supposed to know. And so as I've looked back at this event, and I've thought about this event, I find myself reflecting on one question. Why didn't I ask anyone else if they saw the channel marker lights? And the only answer that I've been able to come up with for that is because I was the best. Because I didn't want to admit to anyone else that I didn't know exactly what was going on, that I didn't know exactly where we were going. You know, I keep a list on my phone. It's a list of things. It's titled Things I've Never Regretted. And just as things come to me, I might jot them down in there and review it every once in a while. And Some are simple, kind of silly. I've never regretted drinking water. I've never regretted turning the TV off. I've never regretted waking up early. Some are a little more serious. I've never regretted putting down whatever it is I was doing to play with my kids. I've never regretted telling my wife I love you. And this event caused me to add something to that list. I've never regretted asking for help. But that day, in the Suez Canal, I didn't ask for help. And I wish that I had the courage at that moment in time to have asked for help. It certainly would have been better for me. It would have been better for the entire watch team, although I assure you the ship was never an extremis. And I wish that I had the courage to admit that I couldn't see the lights and that I needed help. Courage takes a lot of forms. We very quickly think of courage, running into a firefight in Iraq or Afghanistan. We very quickly think of courage as running into a burning building to save someone else. And those are certainly valiant acts of courage. But courage takes a lot more forms that are subtle, that are more soft and more undercurrents of our life. And it takes courage to ask for help. It takes courage to admit that you don't have all the answers, and it takes courage to turn to other people to help you with those answers. In 18 months or a little over, maybe 20 months from now, a lot of the second-class midshipmen, you might be standing watch on the bridge of a destroyer for the very first time. And it's often the junior watchstander who notices something first. It's often the new guy who kind of has something that doesn't seem right in their head, that might notice a potential problem coming at the ship or a potential place that we could get in trouble, down the line. And I will tell you to think about that and to think about, will you have the courage to speak up? It will take a lot of courage, I promise you, being the new guy, to speak up, to risk looking foolish, and to ask a question, to pose a comment to the senior watchstander. But I want you to recognize that those are really important moments for not only for you as a junior officer developing, but they're actually important moments for the more senior officer who's in charge of the evolution or in charge of whatever you're doing, because are they going to accept that? How are they going to react to that? And that's a whole nother tangential conversation. But it will take courage to speak up. I was always actually really good at asking questions that helped other people. I would sit in the wardroom in briefs or meetings or officer training and had no problem asking the question that kind of looked foolish. It looked like a foolish question. But it really wasn't a foolish question. Actually, I remember one specific officer training. We were sitting there, and I asked a question about the concept that we were talking about. And I nearly had a department head come over the table at me and say, "You don't know the answer to that?" And I said, "I know the answer to that, but they don't." And I pointed to the ensigns in the back of the room who were too, likely from my own experience, too scared, afraid, whatever, to actually ask the question. So I was actually really good at asking questions that I knew would help other people. I wasn't very good at asking questions that would help me. And so I let, that day back in May of 2009, I let my reputation, I let being the best get in the way of what was ultimately best for the team. And so I have this vivid memory of the Harbor Master building and this vivid memory of the pit in my stomach of not knowing which way we were going to go from there. And so I encourage you to learn from my mistakes. I could have better used my entire team. I could have leaned on them more when I was uncertain. I could have asked for help. It certainly would have been better for me. It would have been better for the entire watch team. It would have been better for the ship. But I would have had to admit that I didn't have all the answers. I would have had to admit that I wasn't completely confident in this situation. So I hope that as you go through your military career and beyond, that you can learn from my mistakes. You can take something away from those, that you can use the people around you more effectively. You can learn from your peers, you can learn from your subordinates, you can learn from your superiors. And you can have the courage to ask questions and have the courage to admit when you don't have it put all together. You may be wondering if we actually ever made it into the Suez Canal. We did. But I'm convinced that that day I was the last person on the bridge to know where the channel marker lights were. And the lessons that I learned from those lights stay with me even to today, because driving the ship through the Suez Canal was one of the coolest things that I got to do in the Navy. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions, any dialogue. As Admiral mentioned, we want to have a dialogue about not necessarily only that, but certainly those ideas for maybe the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Was it to the right or to the left?
So it's east of the harbor building, which is to the right in that case, for those of you who might have to go through the Suez Canal. There you go. All right.
Hey, Billy, I'd like to ask you a question. The mental stamina, perseverance, determination, those are the qualities that come with the responsibility you had as a leader in the Navy. How does that transcend and help you today in the profession you're so devoted to in terms of being a world-class golfer? There's got to be some...
Absolutely, no doubt about it. That's a frequent question I get from the media is what'd you learn in the Navy that you use in professional golf? And I say, well, we can't drive a ship in the golf. But what I did take away, certainly from the Naval Academy and the Navy, is mental toughness. And that's, if you're not mentally tough at the Naval Academy, you're not here very long. And so I think that is something that serves me very, very well as a professional golfer, is that ability to really stay mentally tough. Golf is certainly a mental game, and sometimes I do this better than others, but that baseline of mental toughness from the Naval Academy and the Navy is certainly something that has served me very well.
Mr. Hurley, right here.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned quite frequently at the beginning this idea of the Naval Academy and the service academies in general being the best and so on and so forth. How did your Naval Academy career, even your quantitative economics degree, prepare you for ship driving as a surface warfare officer and then later as a PGA golfer?
That's the other question you get outside of the Naval Academy, is what the heck does quantitative economics have to do with driving a ship? The answer is absolutely nothing. But it's the idea of all the things that are thrown at you here at the Naval Academy. The second skill that I oftentimes point to is time management. And certainly at the Naval Academy, that's a exceptionally required skill for all midshipmen. And then even in the Navy on board ship, like that is, you very quickly can see the officers who can manage their time and those who can't. And the ones who are able to manage their time definitely have a lot easier time. And so, I think that is probably maybe the number one trait that I see the Naval Academy preparing all officers for, is the ability to manage their time, choose what's most important, and do that first, and not get distracted with these other things that maybe good and necessary that you have to do as an officer, but aren't the main thing. One of the things I often find myself reminding myself is keep the main thing the main thing. And so whatever the main thing is, you got to keep the main thing the main thing. For me, the main thing is shooting low golf scores right now. And I have to ultimately, oftentimes, remind myself that there's other things that I enjoy doing, that this job has provided me the opportunity to do, and they're all good, and I have a great time doing them. But if I'm not doing the main thing and doing what I need to do to keep the main thing, then all those other opportunities and things that I like doing actually aren't going to be there anymore. So it's, for me, figuring out what that main thing is and driving hard towards that and using your time effectively.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, what did the Naval Academy not prepare you for?
I've never been asked that question before. Because doesn't the Naval Academy prepare you for everything? No? Okay. I think the Naval Academy so for me personally, and this might be different for a lot of people. For me personally, the Naval Academy didn't really prepare me to fail. I've kind of been pretty good at everything that I've done. And so I've had, certainly you get older, you have moments where you didn't quite measure up and those types of things. And you have those at the Naval Academy where you get a C in Western Civilization, or you barely pass freshman English, or these types of things. If they made me be an English major, I would have failed out of school. But I think that we have so much of that best, and that is so much of the DNA of the school, that there isn't really room for failure. There isn't really room for failure in the Naval Academy or the Navy at large. And so I would say I didn't get well prepared for that. And that is a part of life. That is a part of whatever you're doing, big, small, or in between. Like there's little pieces where you'll have to deal with that along the way.
Thanks, sir.
Can I follow up on that one? So what have you learned about overcoming failure? Every professional athlete has slumps, hard days.
Yeah. Well, in golf, we technically fail a whole lot more than we succeed. I've played 125 tournaments or 130 tournaments on the PGA Tour, and I've won one. But I think that what I've learned is that it's about learning. It's about growing. It's about using those past experiences to push forward. It's not really a failure if you learn something. It's not really a failure if you have a new idea, or you do push through it and get through that. So that's where that mental toughness kind of comes back in, because you're right. For me, slumps happen. I had maybe the greatest year of my PGA Tour career in 2016. And I had kind of what I would classify now as the worst year of my PGA Tour career in 2017. And by many standards, that was still a fine year, but the idea of now I can view that as a failure, which in one sense I kind of do, but in another sense we did learn things. Me and my team, we did learn kind of maybe what we have to focus on more. And so we take those things and push forward, and then it's not actually truly a failure, if that makes sense.
I think I see golfers in PGA, and there's an amazing amount of concentration and focus, tremendous amount. Give us a word on concentration and focus, and couple that with, as you're prepping for an important swing, what's in your mind?
So what I would say the key for golf, and we can draw parallels for this across life and military and business and whatever, what allows me to focus is my routine. And my routine starts well before you actually even see me have a golf club in my hand. Thinking about the shot, what's next, where I want to hit it, how far I want to hit it. Is this the right club? Is that the right club? Is this the right line? Am I going to play aggressive? Am I going to play safe? Like, these are all things that happen in fractions of seconds for me now that I've been, doing this professional golf thing for, the better part of, 7 years full-time, 8 years full-time now. But so the routine actually becomes so ingrained that right now I'm working to change a little piece of it, and it's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to change what I'm so ingrained in doing. And so that's that preparation of doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's why we train on ship, so that it's second nature, that it's not something you haven't seen before, but it's something that you've dealt before with in training, so that now it's a reaction as opposed to a thinking, processing types of thing. And so I think that routine, that process, and those, for me in golf, it's about standing up to the shot and taking my stance, grip, et cetera, et cetera. But for the Navy in general on ship, it would be, what do you do before taking the watch? You prepare the same way every time so that you're ready to go and ready to do it. So I think it's about that routine to keep in that focus, and then that you can so easily fall back on the routine and not even really know that you're doing it when chaos ensues around you.
I get one more, Billy, if I may. When you describe 16 being a great year, 17 being a tougher year, you must do some analysis and go back and take a look at it. What did I do wrong? What routine did I modify? Did I lose my main focus? What differentiates between a great year one year and then the next year you're not where you want to be?
About 0.75 shots around. But so I think that it was a little bit of winning and going into a new kind of echelon of the PGA Tour brought along its distractions, brought along other opportunities that maybe drew me away from the main thing. And so we didn't have, as a team, me and my team, we didn't have as singular a focus of what 2017 was actually going to be about as we did for 2016. We kind of let 2017, and it's my fault as a leader, we just let that kind of happen to us, as opposed to 2016 we kind of made happen, if that makes sense. So it was kind of just that direction and that system that we had in place in 2016 that, because of all these other things, we didn't quite have in place in 2017. So we got it back in place for 2018, that we worked on it.
Sir?
Yes?
We talked about analysis of past failures, and obviously there's stories about that. Do you have a method or process for reflecting or reflection on some of that, like capture those lessons and bring it forward?
I wouldn't say that I have a strict method. I mean, I have kind of periods of time throughout the year that I kind of allow myself to do that. Certainly in competition, it's a very fluid cycle. You in Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, and you travel and you get ready for the next one, and it's coming at you fast. So there's not a lot of necessarily breaks in time to have that deep reflection. But I will take a look at things throughout the year. We'll call it quarterly, although it's not like strictly in that sense. But you have kind of rhythms of breaks and downtime that I'll look at my stats in more detail. I'll look at the data, right? Actually analyze the real data, because the other thing about golf and life in general is that reality and what you feel oftentimes are not connected. They're not the same. In the golf swing, I feel like my hands are here, but they're really here, and it's a hard thing to make those changes when you don't have that connection to what is real. And so having a reality check in that sense with hard data is certainly helpful in that process.
Might be kind of a JV question. I'm just curious, who is on your team, and then how do you communicate value and their value to your team, to them?
So I have a swing coach, I have a trainer, a physiologist, I have kind of, we'll call him a life coach, I have a psychologist, I'm adding a sports psychologist. I've had a sports psychologist in the past, and we're adding a new one. I have my caddy. And then I have my business manager, and ultimately my wife. She's kind of the head of the team. I'm the CO, she's the Commodore, right? So, it is, you don't see all this. It's not 7 coaches on the sideline of a football game that's making that whole thing go, right? It's really one face out in front, but there are all these people kind of on the back end, and certainly communicating value is challenging. It's not as challenging when things are going well, right? And so it's the challenge of when things are going bad is how do you lean on that team? And this might be the last thought I'll leave you with, but that is, when things are rough, when things aren't going as well as they could go, having those people that you can really lean into. For me, it's natural for me to kind of draw away because it's not as much fun to be around people when things aren't going well, and not as much fun to have those conversations. It's a lot more fun to have a nice dinner with a trophy sitting on the table, right? But that's probably, especially for me, what I've been learning over the last couple of years is that's when it's actually more important for me to push into my team, for me to lean on them for guidance and for where we should be going, and have that kind of team aspect of things. So.
Well, Billy, it's amazing. I could sit here for another hour, but I think there's things called class and other appointments that are out here. What a display for me, just to experience 2 things that I don't see aligned very often, and that is humble confidence. It just like pours out of every cell you have, and I capture that early on. I would say as you prepare to walk away from here, I'm going to add to my iPhone list this thing that says things I've never regretted, just to see what happens. It could be water, but it could be something really, really different. Today, the midshipmen who are youngsters are studying Aristotle and the golden mean and how courage is important, because a lack of courage is cowardice, but too much courage is foolhardiness. And your word to us on courage is significant because we do need this boldness, but courage is also the vulnerability to say, hey, ask the question. And for that, we're so grateful that you're before us today giving us kind of the bigger picture of life. And I wish we were all PGA champions, but,
I don't wish you were PGA champions. There's only so many tournaments.
With that in mind, we want to thank you for your insights this afternoon. And as you know, surface warfare mariners use a compass to find their path as they go into the southern end of the Suez Canal.
I knew which direction we were going. I knew the ship's course.
We do want to use that as just a symbol of the moral compass, because we do need a true north. And we need to be able to use and utilize and learn from those who have gone before us. So for Naval Academy participants, our guests today, we are so grateful for you being here, for celebrating with us and listening to Billy. I'd like to do a shout out to Ms. Marge Bem, and she's our Stockdale Center's Senior Staff Associate, and Mrs. Jacqueline Dana, who's the Stockdale Center's Educational Specialist. Just thank you for putting this together for us. I'd also like to invite you, this afternoon you're going to get an email, and that email is a luncheon seminar evaluation, and I'd love to receive your feedback because we do want to constantly improve what we do. So God bless every one of you, and may our lives always exude honor and courage and commitment. Bye.